One of the arguments I keep coming back to for Democrats and for the left in general is that you need to be completely unapologetic and really aggressive when it comes to talking about economic policy. And what happens is you bait Republicans into defending really unpopular positions. So if you argue endlessly for universal health care, Medicare for all, you're baiting them into saying, I don't think everybody should have health care. You win. If you do $15 minimum wage, you bait them into saying, I don't think the minimum wage should be a living wage. You win. Another one now, especially in the era of COVID, is universal basic income. It's wildly popular now. Everybody loves the idea. And with some people being unapologetic and arguing for it, and some pilot programs going on now around the country that's testing it, well, right-wing pundits have now lost their minds, and they can't help but make terrible arguments against it.
Chicago, they're exploring the idea of a universal basic income. I woke up today, here's my check. Is that the capitalist system that you grew up in?
No, it's not, but I really believe, and I've been talking about this for a couple of years. Of course, Andrew Yang really was propelled to on a national stage promoting this, and some others. It really is amazing, because even with this COVID relief package, the rescue bill, we saw the reintroduction of the welfare state, where this country is going to pay you a certain amount of money every month based on how many kids you have, whether you work or not, whether you've looked for work. You layer that on with existing welfare programs, and then you're going to get paid universal basic income, certainly what they call a guaranteed income. I call it a Faustian deal. And I really think, and I want people to think about this very closely, it's promoted as something that's caring, but I'm not so sure that it is. We're born in the greatest country in the world, where if you apply yourself, you can be anything you want. This is a disincentive to wake up those innate gifts that God may have given you, to wake up those innate talents that you just need to nurture. This is a bribe. This is a Faustian deal for a lot of Americans never to participate or even attempt to participate in the American dream. And I don't think the trade-off is worth it.
Right. It doesn't reward hard work, and they're going to reward politicians who give them the free money. That's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, Brian, that's called being a good politician. This is ridiculous. Politicians are just going to do what the people want to try to get elected. Yeah, that's called being a phenomenal politician, being good at your job, representing the will of the people. I mean, this is like a bribe. They're going to try to give the people money, and the people are going to like it. Ridiculous. Why is that a bad thing? That's what Social Security is. We give money to old people. Why? Because they're old and they need support. Can you imagine this argument in that context? What, are you just going to give old people money for nothing? And make them like you and want to vote for you? Ridiculous. How dumb are you? This is just a bribe, so let me get this straight. It's not a bribe when ExxonMobil gives politicians giant campaign contributions and then they get special subsidies. That's not a bribe when it's for a particular special interest that paid off politicians. But it is a bribe when people support a policy like universal basic income, and then a politician does universal basic income. You got it exactly backwards, dog. The bribe is what ExxonMobil does. The bribe is what Wall Street does. The bribe is what the military-industrial complex does. Because they pay the politicians, and the politicians give the special interests special treatment. That's a bribe. That's the problem. But the people supporting an idea to improve the country, and then the politician delivering on the idea to improve the country, that's called good politics. That's called representative democracy. That's called the way the system is supposed to work. So I love, at the beginning, Brian Kilmeade is being really smug, and he's like, you just wake up and get paid? Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I think that's wonderful. And then he says, is this the capitalist system that you grew up in? And everybody's like, no, it's not. I love how they don't even realize they're helping the left with their own framing. People are going, damn. So what, the capitalist system I grew up in, you get zero help for anything ever, and you're on your own completely, no matter what? Not sure I like that. Then Charles Payne says that COVID relief bill, quote, we saw the reintroduction of the welfare state. So think about that. He's slamming the COVID relief bill as like, this is the reintroduction of the welfare state. Does he not realize that the bill's like 78% popular? Does he not realize that even 59% of Republicans are like, I like this bill. I need this bill. How dumb do you have to be? How dumb can you possibly be? Again, they're doing our work for us. This bill's like welfare. And apparently people really like this. They like welfare, and welfare apparently is very good. Thank you. Thank you for making these points. We appreciate it. But here's the most important part, guys. He says, we're born in the greatest country in the world. Charles Payne says that. First of all, I love the random American exceptionalism, American supremacists, just these assertions. I say this, I think this, I'm saying it. What's it based on? We're born in the greatest country in the world. And this universal basic income is a disincentive to work. And then Kilmeade echoes that point later. He says, people aren't going to want to work. They're not going to want to do hard work anymore. That is fundamentally not true. We just got the results of a new study on this. In Stockton, California, Mayor Tubbs did this pilot program with universal basic income. It was just $500. But you know what they found? People who were part of the program were more likely to go out, find jobs, and get employed. So there's an argument. It incentivizes work. Here, let me just give you one story from that program. There was one guy who was living paycheck to paycheck, working at a job that was shitty that he hated, but he had to keep going because he has to pay the bills. He never had the ability to go out to try to find another job because he was working nonstop at this job and not really getting by, barely getting by. And so having the $500 allowed him to take one day off of that terrible job, off from work, and then go do an interview and then get a better job where he got more money. That's much more indicative of what's going to happen under these programs. That's much more likely how it's going to unfold. The numbers were crystal clear. It wasn't even close. The people who were part of the program were way more likely to become employed and have a job. By the way, the other arguments people like to use, they didn't do it in this segment, but oftentimes people on the right will make this argument in regards to universal basic income. They'll say, well, they're going to spend the money on things that are not good. Wrong. Again, with this pilot program in Stockton, California, we found most of the money, or not most, a plurality of the money went to food. It went to food. And then the next biggest thing was like utilities, important bills that had to be paid. It was like less than 1% that went to stuff like, cigarettes, gambling, whatever, It was without a doubt a successful program. By the way, Alaska has had a version of UBI for a long time now tied to their oil industry. Is Alaska a hellscape? Has everything collapsed? Does nobody want to work? Nonsense. So universal basic income, you know what it fundamentally ended up doing? Giving people a reasonable, fair floor. The bare minimum to get by. And then people given that more reasonable shot thrived and did a lot better. So listen, again, that's not me speaking. That's this pilot program on UBI. That's this Stockton, California program. And now a lot of other, like Chicago's going to test it out. Some others are going to test it out. Listen, man, all the data now shows it's wildly successful. So it's a good idea, but they don't like it because really it's Fox News. They're massively corporatist. They're against anything that's good for the people, that helps the people. All they care about is the culture war nonsense and serving corporations and billionaires. That's what they do. That's what they do. But guess what? Now, because of COVID and some other factors, UBI is wildly popular. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle, dog. There's no putting it back in the bottle. People love it. They're not going to stop loving it. And with all these studies coming out, all this research coming out, all these pilot programs showing how successful it is, you can't beat it. I told you guys, it hopped my list of preferred policies. It did. It hopped my list because I saw what happened with COVID. The easiest way to help people is just give them a direct check. And so that's the answer. Social Security for all. That's how I like to think of it. We have Medicare for all is one of the things we advocate for. The other thing we advocate for or should advocate for is Social Security for all.